So obviously we've been hearing a lot about self-isolating, self-quarantine, and social distancing, but what do all these terms actually mean, and what can and can't you do while you're doing your part? Kerry Bowman is a bioethicist with the University of Toronto. He's joining us this morning. We appreciate your time this morning. Thanks for joining us.
I'm more than happy to do so.
From afar.
Yeah, let's just start with, if people are confused, I'm going to say I don't blame them, because the terms are being thrown around a lot in very different ways. Let's start with self-isolation, because we, in Canada, in Ontario, the whole country, we have been asked to self-isolate. So what that means is we need to keep our exposures to an absolute minimum in any way we possibly can. That's all of us at all times. So if you're out in a social context, and you really need to think about, do you need to be out? That's very important. You're looking at a 6 feet parameter. But look, here's the thing. People are going to say, I can't, how do I do that on a subway? How do I do that in an elevator? I live in a high rise, right? How do I do that? That's tough. Here's the other terms. Quarantine really means if a person has been potentially exposed to something, they need to stay separate. They shouldn't be going out at all and watching for their potential symptoms. Isolation as a medical term, that's what you do with people that are sick. Here's where it gets confusing. A lot of people are using the term self-isolation, which really means a kind of a self-quarantine. But the take-home message for us as Canadians is we have all been asked to social distance. That is the one thing that we have to consider, and that's the most important thing. Some of us have had potential exposures. We need to stay put, minimize everything that we possibly can, and watch for symptoms. I
want to ask you about your personal experience in the past. You were under a self-quarantine during the SARS outbreak. How does this experience compare? Does it feel different this time? What do you think?
You know, it actually really does. There's good news and bad news. I mean, you know, in SARS, the scale of it was so much smaller, and it was really only healthcare workers. And in Canada, that was really only in Toronto. We're on a global scale here. And so, you know, there's an edge to it because it's so much bigger. But here's what's good is technology has come such a long way that it's not as isolating as it was in 2003. But what I would say is, you know, we really need to look at, I'm an ethicist, let's talk about, you know, why are we doing this? So people say, I feel, you know, I need to do something, or I want to help. You are helping so very much if you focus on social distancing. And even if you say, but I'm young and healthy, not the point. This is an act of altruism. We're doing this for other people. And this is how we can stand together as a nation, by going along with this in the best way we possibly can. That's what's so important here.
Yeah, it's certainly an important message for sure. I want to ask you more specifically about the self-quarantine. Okay, so if I'm under self-quarantine right now and I want to get outside, I want some fresh air. What are the rules around that?
Fresh air is actually a really, really good thing. Now, remember, I'm not a virologist, but fresh air is absolutely a good thing. And if you're outside, it's a question of proximity to people. It's actually a good environment to be not around the virus. You know, the virus is less likely to be in that. But again, you have to look at how you're doing that. But, you know, people are going to have to use judgment in many, many ways. If you're in a building with an elevator, you want to think about, how can I do that at a time that's least likely to have exposure to other people, not sort of the morning rush hour on the elevator, those types of things. Getting out and walking, sunshine, you know, is a very, very good thing. If you've had a direct exposure, that could be different, right? If you've been told you've had a direct exposure, you need to stay in. But again, you know, then you would really need to stay put if you've had a direct exposure as much as you possibly can.
Kerry, I want to ask you, because you have gone through the self-quarantine experience, what could you say to people who are in that position right now from an emotional or mental standpoint? What did you learn?
Yeah, it's not easy. It's not easy, and people are going to react to it in very, very different ways. You need to take a break from the media. You know, the media is very important. I would not be bathed in it all day long. You need to find things in your life that make you feel more positive. And if the only way to stay connected is electronic, make phone calls, send texts to people, do that. That's what's really important.
Kerry Bowman, we appreciate your time so much this morning. Thanks so much for your input.
You're very welcome.
Thanks for watching. If you like this, be sure to subscribe here.
And you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.